Keir Starmer may well be the next British Prime Minister. The Labour leader is a hearty lead in the polls. After 13 years of Tory rule, with 3 Prime Ministers in one chaotic year recently, his path to power is clear. But he still has to prove he knows what matters to the British people. And today, I believe he made a massive miscalculation.
Just a few minutes ago, Piers Morgan directed sharp criticism at Keir Starmer, causing a stir in Westminster. The presenter, known for his direct style, accused the Labour Party leader of avoiding tough questions and questioned whether Starmer is truly committed to the values his party claims to stand for. Morgan was especially critical of Starmer's apparent evasion of controversial issues that demand firm responses. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Your support helps us a lot. Let's begin. At a time when thousands are paying attention, Morgan made it clear he's not pleased with Starmer's absence from his program. While he has interviewed high-profile political figures such as the Prime Ministers of Israel and Australia, and even former US President Donald Trump, Starmer's absence on his guest list is striking. Morgan has repeatedly issued an open invitation to Starmer and other Labour members to discuss these issues, yet the response has been evasive, sparking questions about whether the Labour leader is employing a strategy of silence or simply unwilling to face challenging questions. One of the most contentious points has been Starmer's stance on topics of biology and gender, which Morgan has labeled absurd. Even Elon Musk, an influential businessman, has joined the debate, describing certain ideological stances as a threat to civilization. This view, combined with Starmer's reluctance to participate in an interview with Morgan, is raising doubts about the Labour leader's willingness to address these matters openly and publicly. As the invitations continue to go unanswered, Morgan is stepping up the pressure. Through his columns, social media, and show, the presenter is unrelenting in his attempt to highlight what he sees as a media blackout by Starmer and his team. Morgan questions whether this refusal is a deliberate strategy to avoid scrutiny or merely a tactic to dodge the pressure an uncomfortable interview might bring. This silence is increasingly being viewed as intentional omission rather than a simple oversight, leading many to wonder if Starmer fears facing Morgan. The relationship between politicians and the media is crucial, and this situation between Keir Starmer and Piers Morgan is beginning to reveal a larger problem with Starmer's leadership. If Starmer avoids answering questions from a presenter like Morgan, many wonder how he might handle figures like Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping. This controversy appears to highlight an avoidance tactic by Labour, which instead of addressing complex issues, opts for silence, an approach that could backfire in the long term as Morgan continues to apply pressure. Every day that goes by without Starmer accepting the interview is another day for Morgan to portray the Labour leader as incapable of facing direct challenges and lacking leadership. In this sense, Labour seems to be walking a tightrope, with the risk of losing balance in an evasive strategy that already appears to be causing issues. Reportedly, Starmer has instructed his team to avoid discussing controversial social issues, believing that the public isn't interested in these matters. However, this approach seems to be a major miscalculation. The British public actually has a strong interest in these topics and, moreover, holds firm opinions on them. Starmer and his team's strategy of silence on sensitive topics like the woke ideology can be interpreted as a sign of fear of broader social debates. This is beginning to reflect a disconnect with voter concerns, as they struggle to understand why Labour is attempting to ignore or deflect these conversations. Additionally, Starmer's attempt to normalize certain topics, such as debates on diversity, LGBTQ rights, and discussions around slavery and colonialism, is causing controversy. By adopting an approach that seeks to make these progressive stances more acceptable, Starmer could risk alienating some voters. Although his apparent aim is to focus on economic issues, the NHS, and other essentials of daily life, there is a clear problem. This strategy assumes an inaccurate reading of voters' actual concerns. Recent surveys indicate a different picture than Labour presents. Not only are people aware of these woke issues, but they also hold strong views on them. The avoidance tactic some Labour members are employing has begun to create an undeniable disconnect. Labour's silence isn't perceived as neutrality, but as a sign of weakness, or worse, as though they are hiding something. With the elections drawing closer, Labour could find itself in a complicated position, criticized by conservatives for being too woke. In this context, Elon Musk's warnings about the risks of woke ideology have gained attention. Musk has cautioned about what he calls a mind virus that, in his view, poses a serious threat to civilization. For Musk, it's particularly dangerous if it opposes meritocracy or limits free speech, as he sees these as fundamental principles of a functional society. In his view, this virus discourages questioning and fosters an environment where even asking questions can be seen as negative. While Musk and Starmer might seem like very different figures, they both face a similar challenge with this emerging ideology that affects society and institutions. However, while Musk addresses the issue openly, Starmer seems inclined to act as though it doesn't exist. The big question is how long he can maintain this stance before the situation becomes unsustainable. Musk's stance on this issue has raised eyebrows worldwide, as he has issued stark warnings about what he calls the woke mind virus, creating ripples in both corporate and political circles. Unreservedly, the Tesla CEO denounces this phenomenon as a widespread problem that could be eroding society's fundamental pillars. Musk believes the woke culture is shaping a reality where questioning is discouraged and those who express opposing views are punished. His concern goes beyond social media sensitivities. He warns that this mindset could have serious consequences for innovation, free speech, and even democracy itself. His main worry centers around meritocracy. Musk fears that in a society dominated by this ideology, talent and effort will be sidelined by the need to fulfill certain ideological requirements. This, from his perspective, could discourage the innovation needed to solve complex problems. For those who value merit and creativity as drivers of progress, this situation is alarming. Musk also notes that the impact of this mentality isn't confined to technology or major Silicon Valley corporations. In fact, he has shared examples suggesting that this influence reaches into everyday life. In a personal conversation, he mentioned his experience with his own child, who changed name and gender, a situation Musk attributes to the influence of this cultural phenomenon. He expresses that to him, the name change represents a loss of part of his identity due to the woke mind virus. Furthermore, Musk warns of a social landscape where words and language are constantly monitored to avoid offending anyone. According to him, in this culture, terms like woman or mother could become points of contention. Although this may sound extreme, Musk claims it's already a reality in certain circles, and he warns of the implications of living in a society where language is controlled in this way. Self-censorship and a lack of debate are becoming increasingly common due to the fear of being labeled as not woke. Elon Musk believes this climate of fear is counterproductive to open dialogue and critical thinking, which he considers essential for a healthy democracy. This issue is especially relevant in the UK, where the same tension between free speech and self-censorship is evident. While Musk issues his warnings from Silicon Valley, these debates are also taking place in British politics. A recent example of this tension is Keir Starmer's unclear response to questions about biology and gender.
That a transgender woman is a woman and should be allowed on a female ward. What if one of them was sitting here and said that to you, what would be your response?
Well, I disagree. I disagree.
Right.
In the same way I disagree on safe spaces in relation to those who've survived domestic violence and abuse. What I would say, just on this question of same-sex wards, or single-sex wards, I'm sorry, is that there's clarity today of the Constitution. I'm not sure it needed clarifying, but there we are, it's being clarified. Clarity is always a good thing. But the question is availability of single-sex wards, because this was being talked about when David Cameron was Prime Minister, and he said he was going to make sure there were adequate numbers. There are less now than then.
Yes.
For Musk, this type of response reflects the careful walking required to adhere to political correctness, which he criticizes as a threat to free speech. Additionally, this reluctance to respond clearly could be why Starmer avoids focusing on these woke issues, as he has struggled to address even simple questions without sparking controversy. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Your support helps us a lot. Let's continue. Starmer, in response to a question about biology, stated that 99.9% of women do not have a penis, which sparked a range of reactions. For many people, this response seemed confusing, and rather than clarifying the issue, created an uproar that has been widely criticized. Starmer's ambiguous stance illustrates how these issues, which were once matters of common sense, have become complicated and divisive. For the Labour Party, this approach could prove risky, as attempting to satisfy both traditional voters and progressive activists risks alienating both groups. Musk's warning in this context compels us to face uncomfortable questions. Are we building a society where open debate is in jeopardy? Are our institutions being influenced by an ideology that prioritizes feelings over facts? As the world grapples with these issues, the United Kingdom also finds itself at a crossroads, with Musk's words resonating, especially as we see our leaders struggle struggle with such basic questions. The question arises as to whether we are experiencing the impact of the woke mind virus right here. Musk, one of the most influential and powerful people in the world, has warned that this phenomenon threatens civilization. While some may see these words as exaggerated or as a distraction, the reality is that the issue has tangible effects on people's lives. Instead of focusing on other problems, some politicians and public figures have turned their attention to this woke culture, which has sparked intense debates in society and the political sphere. Starmer's comment about biology in particular has triggered a storm of reactions. His statement, suggesting that nearly all women do not have a penis, has been viewed by many as an example of how politics tries to avoid any categorical assertion. For many, this stance is a sign of a kind of political gymnastics, where politicians seem afraid to acknowledge basic facts. Starmer, who aspires to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, turned a simple question into an exhibition of hesitation and ambiguity that has bewildered much of the public. Instead of clarity, Starmer generated confusion, and instead of leadership, he sowed doubt. The public's reaction has been a mix of bewilderment, sarcasm, and concern. On social media, comments and memes quickly multiplied, reflecting a latent unease. For many, the question is clear. If Starmer cannot answer a basic biology question clearly, how could he address the complex issues the country faces? The issue of biology remains important to most people, especially in matters affecting everyday life. For most women, this issue is seen as common sense. However, there is a small group of people who are born with a gender identity that does not match their biological sex, and who experience an internal struggle as they deeply identify with another gender. This is an issue deserving of sensitivity, but also clarity in public debate. Conservative MP Jamie Wallace recently spoke about the challenges facing his party, reflecting an ongoing tension in the political arena. According to Wallace, Labour seems to be at a crossroads, trying so hard to please everyone that they have lost sight of their principles. This attempt at unbalanced equilibrium resembles a dangerous maneuver, and the errors of figures like Keir Starmer have led many to question whether the party still represents its traditional voters. Rather than avoiding controversy, this approach has generated even more, and Labour faces a situation in which all sectors seem discontented. For many voters, this mistake is not a minor one, but a reflection of a deeper disconnect between the party leadership and the real concerns of British society. Some union leaders claim that the public is not interested in these cultural discussions, but polls suggest otherwise. Britons are indeed aware of these issues and, in fact, show considerable interest in them. What's interesting is how social concerns are actually intertwined with economic worries. The full picture generates a growing anxiety about the direction the country is taking. Labour's strategy of dodging woke issues is beginning to look less like a clever tactic and more like a potential recipe for electoral failure. As the elections approach, the question is whether the party will be able to face this reality before it's too late, or if they will make one of the greatest political mistakes in the recent history of the United Kingdom. Rosie Duffield's stance on women's rights has been one of the most contentious points. Her definition of a woman as an adult human female has sparked a heated debate within the party, revealing deep rifts among Labour members. Seeing party leaders in an ambiguous position on gender issues leaves many baffled. For example, Starmer's difficulty in responding clearly to such basic questions as the concept of a woman has generated mixed reactions. For some, it's almost surreal, while for others, it's unsettling. What should be a clear topic has become a source of confusion and concern. These kinds of responses, instead of strengthening the party's image, have led the grassroots to question the direction they are moving. Labour's reaction to figures like Duffield has been swift and forceful. Some in Westminster even suggest that she could lose her position due to her views. For many, it's like witnessing an internal family conflict on a public stage, something that does not benefit the party's image. Despite the Labour leader's attempts to silence her views, Duffield has gained support from her voters. Her defense of basic biological concepts has made her a central figure, reflecting how disconnected the party may be from the concerns of certain segments of the population. Richard Tice, deputy leader of Reform UK, has been outspoken in pointing out that Keir Starmer seems completely out of touch with reality. Tice criticized Starmer for his lack of determination to define what a woman is, suggesting he lacks the courage to stand up for basic convictions. According to Tice, this apparent fear of speaking out clearly is an offense to many women who have fought for equality and the right to vote over the decades. For Tice, Starmer is so trapped in progressive agendas that he can no longer even address fundamental realities, an opinion that many share. Meanwhile, within the Labour Party, MP Rosie Duffield has generated a movement of support among her followers, despite the internal pressure to silence her. Duffield has become a symbol of common sense for some, in a party that critics say has lost its way. Attempting to impose ideological uniformity on figures like Duffield could come at a high cost for the party, as rather than calming the situation, the measure seems to be fueling the controversy. This situation has evolved beyond a simple political debate and is beginning to become a struggle for the very essence of the Labour Party. The stance the party has taken towards Duffield sends an unsettling message to those who do not share all new progressive views. In trying to impose ideological purity, Labour risks alienating a large portion of its historical voters, those who have supported the party through thick and thin, but now feel sidelined by a priority seemingly given to a more vocal minority. This raises a key question: is this truly the path the Labour Party wants to take? Amid these internal divisions, the Conservatives see an opportunity. As the next election approaches, they are ready to capitalize on the dissatisfaction among Labour voters. The Conservative strategy aims to highlight what they perceive as Labour's disconnect with the concerns of ordinary people, pointing out that the party leadership seems more interested in pronoun debates than in economic issues and people's living situations. However, this Conservative strategy also presents challenges. While it may resonate well with their base, the impact on undecided voters is less predictable. Recent elections have shown mixed responses to this firm stance by the Conservatives on cultural issues. Some view the frankness positively, while others see it as a ploy to divert attention from more pressing matters. For the Conservatives, focusing too heavily on cultural conflicts could be risky. If they stray too far from economic issues, they might lose sight of the priorities of those voters affected by the cost of living crisis. The Conservative approach involves walking a fine line, playing on both their credibility on cultural matters and their focus on the economy, seeking a balance that appeals to both their supporters and undecided voters. The Conservatives have voiced a criticism of the Labour Party, arguing that at a time when many families are struggling to make ends meet, worrying about debates like pronouns is a luxury. For the Conservatives, the priority should be on economic issues, and they warn that Labour seems to be losing sight of the real concerns of the people. The challenge for the Conservative Party, however, is to find a delicate balance between addressing cultural issues and offering concrete proposals on economic matters. As the Conservatives increase the pressure on Labour's leadership, all eyes are on how Keir Starmer will respond. Will he take a firm stance on these issues or continue to dodge them? The tension is mounting, and what the Labour Party does or fails to do could define its chances in the next election. This cultural conflict has ceased to be a secondary issue and has become a key factor in the upcoming elections. Labour's stance of avoiding interviews and declining questions seems to be creating a narrative against them. Every interview avoided and every comment withheld contributes to the image of a party that to some seems to fear public scrutiny. This raises questions. Why is Labour avoiding questions? Are they afraid that their policies will not withstand detailed analysis? Or perhaps are they worried that their carefully constructed image will not withstand the pressure of a challenging interview? This strategy of avoiding the media could backfire significantly. In attempting to control the narrative, Labour has ended up creating another, less favorable one. Each empty seat in an interview program and each refusal to comment in articles reinforces the perception of a party unprepared to face challenges. The situation leaves a broad picture in which Labour appears as a player avoiding difficult challenges. One might wonder how they expect to face the complexities of government if they cannot handle the uncomfortable questions of journalists.